The first episode of The Rings of Power Season 1 is titled Shadow of the Past. The episode begins with a voiceover by Galadriel, who reflects on the nature of evil, stating that nothing is evil in the beginning. This philosophical opening is juxtaposed with a scene of children playing, highlighting the innocence and beauty of the world before the darkness of Morgoth's rule. The episode then flashes back to a time when Galadriel was a young girl, building a boat and watching it float away on the river. She is interrupted by a bully who destroys the boat, prompting Galadriel to defend herself. Her brother Finrod intervenes and stops the assault, offering Galadriel words of wisdom before walking away. The episode then jumps forward in time to show the aftermath of Morgoth's defeat in the First Age. The elves are shown to be rebuilding their cities and recovering from the devastating war. However, this peace is short-lived, as Morgoth's army of orcs led by Sauron spreads across Middle-earth. Galadriel's brother, Finrod, is killed by Sauron during a battle. Sauron brands Finrod's flesh with a symbol that not even the wisest of elves could understand. This left Galadriel angry and with a thirst for revenge. The episode then takes a time skip to the present day, where Galadriel is now an older and more experienced warrior. She is shown scaling a frozen wall with nothing but a knife, determined to find and defeat Sauron. This scene highlights Galadriel's growth and development as a character, as well as her unwavering commitment to her quest. In the icy lands of Forodwaith, Galadriel's soldiers urge her to turn back and tell her that there's nothing ahead as they face the harsh climate. But Galadriel remains resolute and tells them to keep going forward. This is where Galadriel and her company explore a deserted orc citadel, where they discover Sauron's mysterious sigil carved in ice. In the citadel, they encounter an ancient, monstrous creature that looks set to kill them, but Galadriel ends up killing it with merely her knife, showing her side as a fearsome warrior. After killing the beast, Galadriel's company revolts and tells her that they're not going to follow her anymore, as they believe that she'll end up getting them killed. Galadriel pleads with them to keep going forward and find the last stronghold of the orcs, but their mind is made up and they decline. The episode also introduces other characters, including High King Gil-galad, Elrond, and Celebrimbor. These characters are all familiar faces from the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but they are presented in a new and different light here. Elrond is shown to be a more youthful and energetic character, and Celebrimbor is introduced as a skilled crafter of the Rings of Power. Galadriel travels to Lindon, which is the headquarters of the High Elves, where she is greeted by her friend Elrond. Elrond congratulates her on her successful exploits in the war and welcomes her back. Galadriel, however, tells him that her work is not done, and she plans to ask the High King for a new company so she can go back hunting Sauron. The king organizes an event to celebrate the heroes who have returned from the war, including Galadriel. The king tells them that the days of war are over, and it's now time for peace. He says that they can all now go to the immortal lands of the far west, where they can spend the rest of their days in peace. After the ceremony ends, Galadriel and Elrond talk again, and Elrond tries to talk Galadriel out of her decision to go back. Galadriel tells Elrond that it was her brother's mission to hunt Sauron, and it's her job to take it forward now. Elrond tells Galadriel that she's just conflicted, and the evil is now gone, and she has nothing to worry about. He asks her to hang up her sword and live in peace now. Galadriel asks what she would even be without her sword, to which Elrond replies, "What you've always been, my friend." In the Southlands, a land of men, the elves who were watching over them are finally allowed to return home. Arondir, an elf, says goodbye to Bronwyn, a human healer whom he has feelings for despite their species not seeing eye to eye. However, their separation is short-lived as they venture to a nearby village, where they find it destroyed, indicating that the evil isn't gone. They discover a disturbingly sick cow, which leads them to investigate further, revealing signs of danger in Bronwyn's home village. Her son, Theo, reveals a kilt engraved with Sauron's symbol, foreshadowing the return of the Dark Lord. In the Harfoot's land, the only one without strife, the migrating ancestors of the hobbits are living peacefully. However, This tranquility is disrupted by the arrival of a shooting star that crashes outside their camp. This event marks the beginning of a new era of darkness and danger in Middle-earth. Everyone in the realm witnesses this shooting star, and immediate looks of concern start appearing on everyone's faces. Galadriel, who's on a ship heading to the city of Valinor, also sees the shooting star. She jumps off the ship seconds before it reaches Valinor, stranding her in the middle of the ocean, trying to figure out what to do. Back in Lindon, a leaf laden with a dark substance falls before the king, signaling the return of evil. Meanwhile, Eleanor, a Harfoot, investigates a shooting star that has crashed just outside their camp. She looks at it with amazement and horror as she sees a figure curled up right in the middle of the crash amongst all the fire. This concludes the first episode of The Rings of Power Season 1. The second episode of The Rings of Power Season 1 is titled Adrift. The episode opens with Galadriel adrift at sea after jumping off the ship bound for Valinor at the end of the previous episode. She is rescued by a group of human survivors on a makeshift raft, but they turn on her when they realize she is an elf. One of the men pushes Galadriel off the raft, believing her presence has doomed them. This ends up saving Galadriel, as the raft is then destroyed by a massive sea creature called the Worm, leaving only Galadriel and one human survivor, a man named Halbrand, floating in the ocean. In the Harfoot community, the mysterious stranger who crash-landed in the previous episode regains consciousness. Young Harfoot Nori Brandyfoot and her friend Poppy Proudfellow discover him and begin caring for him in secret. Nori goes near the crash site, much to the disappointment of her friend, and touches the fire, only to realize it's not warm at all. Suddenly, the giant, as they both term it, wakes up and grabs Nori's hand before passing out again, startling the daylight out of Nori. They put the stranger on a cart and wheel him away because Nori says that she feels responsible for him. The stranger exhibits unusual powers, causing disturbances in the Harfoot camp. One incident involves Nori's father, Largo, who snaps his ankle while carving lines in the ground. Nori tries to communicate with the stranger, who seems fixated on a constellation in the night sky. The stranger makes strange noises that summon whirlwinds, and Nori and Poppy form a tentative bond with him, bringing him food and observing his drawings of runes they cannot decipher. The presence of the mysterious stranger causes unease in the Harfoot community, with the Elder Sadok resisting calls to break camp and move on, at least until after an upcoming festival. In a region, Elrond visits the elven smith Celebrimbor, who is determined to forge something of great importance. Celebrimbor tells Elrond a story about the Silmarils, the powerful jewels created by the elf Feanor. Celebrimbor envisions building a massive tower to house a great forge capable of transforming Middle-earth. However, he informs Elrond that the project must be completed by spring and requires an enormous workforce. Elrond suggests seeking help beyond their own race and proposes traveling to the realm of the dwarves to persuade the dwarves of Khazad-dûm to assist with the construction of the new forge. Elrond, accompanied by Celebrimbor, arrive at Khazad-dûm to meet with his old friend, Prince Durin. Initially, Durin refuses to allow them into the city, but Elrond invokes the right of Sigintareg. The gate promptly opens, and Elrond alone makes his way inside, after assuring Celebrimbor to trust him. Durin is deeply offended that Elrond has been absent for the past 20 years, missing major events in Durin's life. The Rite of Sigintareg turns out to be a competitive rock-splitting contest. They engage in the rock-splitting contest, which Elrond ultimately forfeits. Durin's wife, Disa, convinces Durin to at least consider Elrond's request for aid, though the Dwarven king remains wary of putting trust in the elves. Meanwhile, Galadriel and Halbrand have a tense conversation while adrift at sea. Halbrand reveals that he and the other survivors were fleeing from orcs, which piques Galadriel's interest as she continues her obsessive hunt for any trace of Sauron. She pressures him into telling her where he encountered the orcs and exactly how many of them were there. Halbrand tells her that he encountered them in the Southlands. Galadriel asks him to take her to their last known location, but Halbrand tells her that he's got his own plans. Soon, a heavy storm hits, and Galadriel becomes entangled in a rope, falling into the water with seemingly no chance of survival. Halbrand jumps in after her, cuts the rope, and saves her. Eventually, a ship approaches them through the fog, hinting at a potential rescue or further entanglement in the growing conflict. In the Southlands, Arondir the elf continues to investigate the ruins of the destroyed village, discovering an underground tunnel system. He sends Bronwyn to warn the villagers, but they are skeptical of the threat. When Bronwyn returns home, her son Theo is attacked by an orc. Together, they manage to kill the orc and use its severed head to convince the villagers of the danger. Realizing the threat, the villagers decide to evacuate and seek refuge. While investigating the tunnels, Arondir notices a large, monstrous figure approaching and quickly tries to retreat. He sees rats fleeing in his direction and attempts to crawl away but falls into a water pit. As he swims out and prepares to defend himself with his knife, a monstrous creature appears from behind and abducts him. As Bronwyn and the villagers begin evacuating, Theo discovers that the Sauron-branded sword he found reacts to his blood, causing a fiery blade to emerge. This hints at the growing influence of a dark force in the Southlands. As the villagers flee, ominous signs suggest that the orcs are once again gathering strength in the region.
This concludes the second episode of The Rings of Power Season 1.